I'm Caro, and welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be sharing a special recipe. It's my grandmother's pumpkin flan. It's the once-a-year dessert that she would make for Thanksgiving that I always looked forward to. It's made with real pumpkin, lots of cinnamon, and has a deep, delicious caramel flavor. To me, there's nothing more fall than this. So follow along to learn how to make it. To start, let's get our large pot so we can cook the pumpkin. First, we'll start with breaking down the pumpkin. We're going to cut it into large chunks and place it into a large pot so we can cook it. I cut all the pieces into about the same sizes so that they all cook evenly. Also, really important to note here is to not peel the pumpkin so that it doesn't fall apart while it's boiling. As I cut the pieces, I also cut off the fibrous parts with the seeds. The great part about this recipe and making it in the fall time is that pumpkin is in season, and using fresh, ripe pumpkin is the key to this flan. Once all the pumpkin is cut and in the pot, we can add the 3 cinnamon sticks and 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Last thing here is to add in the water, and I just add water until it just covers most of the pumpkin. I do rearrange them a little bit just to make sure that they're all touching the water, and I'll also add a generous pinch of salt. Now we can place the pot on the stove on high heat and allow to boil until the pumpkin is tender. While the pumpkin cooks, I'll make the caramel that will line the flan mold. The way I like to make caramel so that it never crystallizes is to start with half a cup of water, and then I'll add 2 cups of sugar slowly and right to the center of the water so that it soaks into the water and none of the sugar crystals touch or stick to the sides of the pot. This method also helps with not needing to stir the caramel, which is usually the cause of the crystallization. Now we're going to allow it to cook on high heat until it turns an amber color. You want to stay watching it the whole time, as it can easily go from amber to burnt in just a few seconds. Once you start to smell the sugar browning, it's almost done. I like to move it around a little bit to see under all the bubbling to see the actual color. When it's almost an amber color, I immediately pour about half into the mold. I like to pour it out right before it's the actual amber color I want, because it continues to cook even after you take it off the heat. So it will darken even a little bit more. If you take it off when it's the amber color you're looking for, you risk it going over a little, and it can come out bitter that way if it's too dark. Then, with gloves on, as this caramel is extremely hot and it will burn you, I move the caramel around so that it covers the bottom and the sides of the mold. Then I'll set it aside and let it completely cool down.
Do you know what the secret ingredient is to this channel? You guys hitting like and subscribe. And thanks, you guys are the best.
By this time, the pumpkin should be cooked. I always test one of the pieces with a fork. If it goes through all the way easily, then it's done. Also, can we take a minute to appreciate these pot holders? Thank you to my friends over at Little Lamb Linens for these. First thing we'll do now that the pumpkin is cooked is to pour out and reserve 1 cup of the cooking liquid, which we'll be using in a minute. The rest of the cooking liquid can be thrown away. Now we'll use a separate bowl to remove the peel. I use a large spoon and a fork to help me take the peels off the pieces of pumpkin since they're still super hot. I like to make sure to scrape off all the pumpkin from the pieces of the peel. I should have warned you that this recipe is a little tedious, but I think it's all worth it in the end. Also, I could eat a bowl of this pumpkin just like this. It's at its peak ripeness where it's naturally a little bit sweet and it's infused with all the cinnamon. I don't think you can get the same flavor with the canned stuff. Now that the pumpkin is peeled, we can get ready to puree it. I just give the pot a rinse, and I'll take a bit at a time and pass it through the strainer. This is where the reserved cooking liquid comes back in. I'll add spoonfuls of the cooking liquid to help it pass through the strainer easier. Prepare to get an arm workout here, but this step is really needed to get the pumpkin smooth and to catch any little pieces of peel or pumpkin fibers. I have to take about like 50 breaks when I'm doing this. I'll just continue passing the pumpkin through the strainer, adding some liquid to help me through as I go, until all the pumpkin is pureed. Once we're done pureeing, don't forget to scrape the bottom of the strainer. You can see that the pumpkin is super smooth now. Now to the pumpkin, we'll add the rest of the ingredients. We'll add 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of evaporated milk, 1 cup of whole milk, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 4 tablespoons of dulce de coco, 1 stick of melted butter, and 1 teaspoon of salt. I like to stir everything up and then go ahead and give it a taste for salt. It's important to remember that even desserts and sweets need to have a good amount of salt so you can really taste all the flavors. To make the slurry, which is what's going to thicken our mixture, we'll combine 4 tablespoons of cornstarch and 3 tablespoons of milk. This flan is more like a pudding set in a caramel than a traditional baked in a water bath flan. That's why we use the cornstarch to help it thicken and solidify. If you've never made a slurry before, once you go to mix the milk and the cornstarch, it's almost going to feel like it's giving you like a little tough time to mix in. Just continue to mix it and work it through until it's all smooth. Now we can place the pot on the stove and bring it up to a simmer, mixing it constantly as it can burn easily. Once it's simmering, we can slowly stream in the slurry, continuing to stir constantly. Once the cornstarch is in, you'll see that it starts to thicken immediately. As it thickens, continue to stir it for about 1 to 2 more minutes. You can take the pot on and off the heat to control the bubbling, but don't stop stirring or it will stick and burn at the bottom. After it's cooked for about 1 to 2 minutes, it's all done. From here, we'll ladle it into the caramel coated mold. I think filling it about 1 to 1.5 inches tall is good enough so it can be sliced nicely. Since it's like a pudding, if you fill it too high, the weight will make it not hold its shape very well when you cut it. Now, you'll need to place it in the fridge until it is completely cold so that it can firm up. Now that it's completely cooled down, we can go ahead and cut into it. Like I said, this was a dessert my grandma only made once a year, and I can see why now that I've learned how to make it. You gotta wait for the pumpkin to be in season, and it's pretty laborious, but I think that's what makes it so delicious and special. The flavor is just so delicious. You really taste the pumpkin and all the cinnamon and that deep caramel flavor. Also, all the little bits of coconut that just complement the pumpkin and they add another layer of depth. I have to say, this beats pumpkin pie for me every year. I hope you guys liked this video. Let me know down below in the comments if you're gonna be trying this out instead of pumpkin pie this year. And don't forget to like and subscribe.